Welcome to the Microschools Show, your window on the global microschools movement. Whether you're a teacher with a dream to build a school of your own or a parent looking for a school that will suit your amazing kid, you're sure to be inspired by the creativity and innovation of our guests. I'm your host, Dr. Meryl Leineberger. Microschools Show was launched to feature guests from all over the globe who are championing personalized learning for students by building a microschool of their own, as well as spotlighting some of the key players in the microschools movement. Today, I'm talking with Laura Fragomeni, and I'm hoping, Laura, I said that right. She's the founder of Schools Without Suffering. She's passionate about educating students with diverse learning needs. She's taught students in grades K through 16 in a wide variety of settings, including traditional public schools, homeschools, private tutoring, hospital school programs. And she's honed in on a neuroscience-based approach to instruction and academic coaching that really works. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Did I mess your name up?
It's Fragomeni.
Fragomeni. Okay.
Yes.
I should have asked you before we started recording.
Not a problem.
So Laura, I was excited to talk with you because you're a little bit different than the guests we've had on before. You're at least to me, and I want you to tell everybody what you're doing, but it seems to me like you're an edupreneur who's tried a variety of things. You offer a variety of services, but sort of over time, it sounds like you are growing into a full-fledged microschool.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. And I'm loving the way that I feel like now I get to say that to people. I'm growing a microschool. So I started my career as a public school teacher. I taught elementary school science lab, and was the first elementary school science lab teacher in the entire district. So I think my sort of ingenuity on edupreneur kind of hat really got kicked off there because I had to define the vision for this program and the mission and how I was going to deliver it, which is a lot of what you do as an entrepreneur also. And from there, I kind of took the lessons that I learned in that particular classroom setting with me to all the other settings that you just described, and saw in each of those settings a common thread of anxiety being kind of fostered and grown in a lot of my students because of the specific rigid structures, specific rigid definitions of success that come along with our traditional schooling structure. Assignments, deadlines, grades, final grades, that's it. And a lot of perfectionism, performance anxiety, that kind of thing, really coming out as a direct result of those structures. So as I was making my kind of last career change and thinking about what I wanted to do, people kept asking me, and I said, well, if I could just do this, if I could just teach students how to, first of all, why they're feeling a lot of the ways that they're feeling, and why it is stopping them from doing the things that they want to do and feel good doing it, and that they can do something about it, and how is what I would do. And I said that enough times that I went ahead and just decided to do it. So that's how School Without Suffering was born. And I do offer a couple different services. I do a one-on-one program, which is intensive 6 weeks, where I'm focused on exactly with a particular student who maybe has a more within their own learning profile, a set of diversities, a wider set of goals that they really need that targeted one-on-one attention for at least a period of time. And then I also teach or have available online courses, 7 of them at the moment, and 4 programs that students can go through for things like overcoming math anxiety, overcoming writing anxiety, learning to manage their time and initiate tasks effectively. And within that, I will see those students. It's not purely online, like they just go and it's self-paced and I never see them. they can meet with me up to 5 times a week in order to ask questions, practice the strategies that they're learning in the course, and really get help habituating and unlearning old thought patterns and habituating new ones and new behaviors.
That's really cool. So I love the thinking here. How is it that you think that you're starting to become a micro school? Is it through actually working with some of these kids more directly and feeling like maybe they have the need to have community with other kids like themselves?
Yes, very much. So when I launched my courses, so I started off sort of just thinking of myself as a private tutor because I didn't have another lens to look at that through. And then realized that there would be such a benefit for students who do experience these types of anxiety to see that they're not alone and see that other students, a lot of them have the same fears and struggles that they do, and that they can support each other along the way. So that was where the idea of courses was born. And I really thought, how am I going to deliver these in a way that is flexible so that students can engage with the material when it makes sense for them, both kind of time of day wise, as well as where they are in their own headspace wise, because I am working with a population of students that does get overwhelmed and can feel overwhelmed and blocked, at different times of the day, at different times of the week. So wanted to keep it really flexible, but also wanted to make sure that they have the opportunity to meet each other, to talk with each other, and to get that guidance and that personal connection with their teacher, which is also extremely important when you're talking about, really any content, but especially content that's so based in emotion. And so that's how I came up with this model of the hybrid online course where the content is there, the exercises are there, the videos are there, and they can engage with them on their own schedule with a parent or by themselves as needed. And then I'm here and I'm available 5 days a week. Whenever you are ready and need to come in, I'm happy to see you and I want to see you. And that has been really great. So I get to meet with I keep it small, so it's 3 students at a time in those sort of off hours or small group coaching sessions. And they just get to see, and I do get to talk to them one-on-one sometimes if they come in a little early or something like that. And I get to ask, how is this experience for you? How does it feel to be working on these things, which I know are scary for you, in the presence of other students? And the answers I get are awesome, because essentially what they get to do is practice doing what they find really scary, emotionally hard, in a small group where they know that the other students there also feel that way and they can support each other before a lot of my students will return to a more traditional classroom.
Yeah,
Where
I'm
they
curious. Tell me a little bit about who's the typical student who's participating in your services. Are they enrolled in a public school still, or are they homeschooling kids, or are they in private schools, or something? Are they unschooling kids? Who's
Yeah,
the
so
service
actually I
taker?
have a mix of all of those. The majority are in a traditional public school or were in a traditional public school when they came to me, and then maybe moved out. And then I also have homeschoolers who have been homeschoolers forever. So what I've seen is, and if we're going to talk typical, we'll go with the majority. What I've seen is that parents will come to me when they're, maybe it's been a year, a couple of years, and they have a story of, my child in, sometimes it's first grade, had this experience where they started to fall behind in math, and then heard, maybe during a parent teacher conference or something like that, that there's concern about them struggling. And then they get this identity that they are someone who struggles in math, and that's bad. And so then they develop over the course of years more and more anxiety about math, to the point where now they're not participating in class anymore. Especially now parents, now that a lot of students are home, they're also seeing this. So the student is having a meltdown when it's time to go on for Zoom class, or when they have to turn on their camera or something like that. So parents will see that, and in some cases will pull the child from the traditional school and homeschool, or pull the child from the traditional school and decide to unschool. But there's still that level, essentially trauma, that needs to be addressed in order for the student to not carry around this identity of I'm just bad at X, or like, a lot of students are very worried and want to keep it hidden, like worried that somebody's going to discover that there's someone who struggles. And then also the parent wants to make sure that every opportunity is open for the child. We don't want students just to cut off an entire area of potential interest because they developed this particular anxiety about it when they're young. So a big, definitely initiator of a lot of this stuff is a traditional school system. And then you see students kind of move into homeschool and unschooling.
Is there some sort of characteristic of the kid that you work with? I'm thinking that there are some of the terms that I'm hearing used are highly sensitive or twice exceptional or neurodiverse. Do you think like those are those terms you would use to describe the students you're serving?
A lot of them, yes. Definitely the term neurodiverse resonates. And I do work specifically with twice exceptional students. I have a program specifically for those students because they have their own set of challenges. It's very interesting to think about a student who has extreme ease in some areas and then extreme difficulty in others, and how their brain sort of make sense of that. Things are supposed to be easy. If something is hard, it's because I am X, or I am just not good at that, or whatever it is. But in terms of how I would characterize all of them, I certainly have students who do not fall in a neurodiverse category and still have developed this highly specific anxiety about a subject matter. So especially math and writing is where I see it most. So my students who would not qualify for any sort of special services really ever, but still have this, they have developed, and it's kind of a mental health issue at that point, but have developed this block or this anxiety around a specific subject because of the very specific experiences and kind of lowercase t traumas that they have experienced in the classroom around that subject and their identity as it relates to it.
I think I'm very excited listening to you talk about your service, because I just know that the kind of kid you're working with and the issue that you're really focused in, that niche service, is so needed. This is something that the kids fall through the cracks in school, in public school, every single day around these concerns, because like you talked about, these are low level traumas. What gets more attention are the kids with the bigger traumas, kids with big issues going on at home, or addictions, or those kind of things. And so these students who have, and I like how you're talking about it, it's like a block, or it's actually a learned mindset
Yeah.
around something, that stuff just doesn't get addressed. The finest teachers are absolutely aware of the fact that their students have these issues, and they just don't have time to put the focus on remediating that, supporting that, helping overcome that. So do you feel like, can you tell us a little bit about, somebody that's been able to overcome one of these challenges through working with you?
Yeah. So I had a couple of years ago who was incredibly inspiring to me, in just wanting to continue this work, whose name I'll call Alex. And they had been pulled out of their traditional public school. And Alex was from a wealthy family, somebody who was mom who was very high up in a big tech company. Dad also very successful, lived in a wealthy neighborhood, had access to a great, high quality, high performing school, and ended up in middle school being pulled out because they had developed a level of anxiety around math and science, which is interesting given that I worked in math and science. And it had gotten them to a place where they were no longer curious, no longer excited, no longer even saw themselves as like a good, quote, good student, even though the kid was brilliant, super smart, didn't actually have any sort of learning disability, didn't actually have any particular, there were some gaps in their math skills, but that was because they were shutting down during math class, not for any other reason. And so what I was able to do was go in and say, okay, we're absolutely going to remediate these math skills because that's going to be important for your later learning. We're not going to start with just, multiplication flashcards or something like that. We're going to start with what got you here to this in the first place. And you mentioned my neurospace approach. I start by teaching them the neuroscience. I start by teaching them the basic neuroscience of anxiety and how fight, flight, or freeze is triggered, and how that can be triggered when we learn these associations between things that are not actually, dangerous. They're not actually putting us in any physical harm's way, something like a math class, but get associated with a feeling of fear and stress. And so whenever it becomes time for math class, or whenever you pull out a math book, or you start an assignment, you are immediately moving into this stress state that is stopping you from being able to enjoy what you're doing. And so learning that, and then learning very specifically how to kind of dismantle that stress response. And I use strategies from my educational therapy training, and I use strategies from, there's a book called Buddha's Brain, is the neuroscience of love, compassion, and I usually have it on my desk, but I don't, but the book is by Rick Hansen. And we build up those skills, and we do things like infuse negative memories with more positive emotions, and we do things like have positive experiences about math. So just watch fun math videos on YouTube. I really love Arthur Benjamin, the math magician. And so I did with Alex at the same time that we were doing, math that he found interesting, and then tying that and showing how any math can actually be interesting and positive. And over the course of 6 weeks, he went from, I hate math and science, and it's a dumb thing to do in school, and I'm just not good at it, to like, actually, I want to keep doing this because it is interesting, and I understand that when I get to that state of not feeling good, I have a level of control over it. I don't just have to stay in that. I can actually pursue this interest.
It's so powerful. It reminds me, I teach a course on mindfulness in the classroom, a grad class, and it's designed to give teachers those strategies for themselves, for helping them to continue in the atmosphere of teaching that's become so stressful. But it's also about considering contemplative practice for students. And a big part of mindfulness is that becoming aware of the way your brain works, and seeing habitual thinking, and understanding that in the awareness of that, you then have this beautiful ability to change your thoughts, which changes your experience. And I think in all of these phobia, it's kind of like a phobia of certain content areas, and you're helping kids to work through that. So so you're working with groups of kids and you're bringing them in. Have you ever thought about actually opening a physical building where kids who have these phobias come together and master them and then become classmates? And
I have thought about it, not in the last couple of years, and certainly not since the pandemic. I think that being online, and having had kind of mastered that has been extremely helpful, since March of last year, when we just needed to be available this way. And I think I will always keep that. And something about opening a building now is like, but then I'm not available to, the kids in the UK or even the kids outside of where I live. There's a little bit of resistance there, but it is also so powerful to be in person together. And so I think it is likely that eventually my path will lead there. And I have certainly thought about it before. And I think one of the really exciting things for me is seeing my older students. So my older high school and above students becoming really passionate about sharing what they've learned with their peers, because all of my students have friends who have experienced very similar things to what they've experienced, and they have so much compassion for them and want them to know that they don't have to feel this bad, that they can actually feel good. And one of the things that I'm most excited to see is them go out into the world and continue to spread the message and help teach the skills. And what I think would be really cool, now that you've asked this question, is if we could all, if there could be this sort of umbrella school without suffering that maybe I have here where I live, but there are former students of mine who may want to get trained, may want to do something like that in their own community. So now that I think about it, a building is not at all restrictive.
Yeah, it really, it is, and it is, and it isn't. I mean, I have clients who have taken their programs fully online, and I have lots of clients who continue to have a physical space because the community that they're in, that's actually what the children want.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things we're doing is we get our kids together every week online so that our kids who have these face-to-face schools actually know that they're not alone, right? There are kids in Minnesota talking to kids in Florida, talking to kids in Maryland, and so on. And we're, God willing, when the pandemic wraps up, or with socially appropriate social distancing, we're going to be getting the kids together to have summer camp experiences together, potentially have opportunities for kids to do school exchanges and things like that. So, there's ways around being place-based, and it's just all a lot of fun. I am so grateful that you came on to talk. I know that you told me you have another meeting, and I'm want to be cognizant of your time. So if you need to hop off, I'm just going to wrap up for people. I have a ton more questions. We might have to have you come back, Laura.
I would love to.
Yeah. If you want to get in touch with Laura, you can reach her through her website, which is schoolwithoutsuffering.com. Thank you for listening to today's show. If you'd like to be a guest on the show to talk about your microschool or to share your work, which fits into the microschools movement, kind of like Laura's does. It's different, but it absolutely is part of this movement. Please reach out to me at mara@microschoolbuilders.com to set up a time for an interview. And until next time, be well.